Hello, everyone, and welcome to an edition of Sweet Spice Sweets honoring Juneteenth celebration. And today we are going to learn how to make a sweet potato pie. What is so important about a sweet potato pie? Being a Black family, sweet potato pies go with every occasion. So for birthdays, Sunday dinners, and especially Thanksgiving and Christmas, there is no Black dinner complete without a sweet potato pie. So today we are going to learn how to make one. All right. But before we get started, the first thing I want you to do is please turn your oven on. Get it started now. Put your oven on, set it at 350. Okay. Just to give you a little bit, you should have already received your kits by now. There's a little bit of tweaking in some of the ingredients there. You were sent with just one of these. If you can, get you two more. That way you would have three. So yes, there was a small typo in the recipe. So you should have one, but if you can, just get you two more of these, and we're going to go from there. You should also have a stick of butter. Mine is softened. Hopefully yours is also. And mine is a mixture of the sugar, the nutmeg, and the cinnamon. So it's a half a teaspoon of nutmeg, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a whole cup of crystal ripe sugar. As you see here, I kind of got everything laid out. So I have my one potato peeled already, but I'm going to show you a good way to do the other one. So this one is still kind of warm. I have two in here. So we're going to start with this first one. Real simple to do. Sometimes if you boil them, these were actually baked so we could quickly get them going. But if you boil them, they're really, really easy to peel. So I always just take the two little tips off. It helps. And a lot of times you should be able to just peel the skin off. It's the first layer. You kind of see what I'm doing here. Yep, just peel that first little layer off. And you should be good to go. Again, second potato. Do that. And the reason that I like to take the tips of these off, if you know anything about sweet potatoes, they always have those little stringly little thingies that is, it's attached to the skin. And if you do it right, perfect. You won't get those little skins just going. I just hate them. I call them little shreds, but again, I don't know. So I'm going to take the other two and I'm just going to add these to it. All right. One thing you always see me doing is I'm wearing gloves because I wear nails. So this is just to ensure that a nail does not fall in your dessert. So I always try to wear gloves to avoid that. Because anyone that knows me, I love to have my nails done. I just don't want you to eat one of them. So that's my way of protecting you here. So hey, so you'll see me do this a lot. I will change my gloves very often. No worries, I have no problem, and I have a lot of gloves for that. All right, so moving forward, we do have your oven's heating. We got our potatoes peeled here, and my potatoes are still warm. So they don't have to always be hot, but the warm would make it very well received when you add the butter. So the first thing I like to do, and this is just a Michelle thing, add my butter to this while it's still warm. And remember, the butter is soft already, so it's going to be an easy blend. Always do a masher and just mash. You know, you want to just kind of get them what I call acquainted with each other. One thing about me, some people who are cooks, they know what I mean by this. I talk to my food. But sometimes, you have a bond with a sweet potato. Yes, I can bond with a sweet potato. Why? Because by the time that sweet potato is done, you can taste the love in the sweet potato pie. So I'm just mashing this up, and I do talk silly stuff just to let everybody know. But as I mash this up, as you can kind of see the texture here, I make it extra smooth before I put it in the blender, just to make it smooth, because you want it to be smooth. A little lumpy it will be, but you want it to be really, really smooth for it to bake properly. And It's okay if you get it a little lumpy. Lumps are good too, but you want to get it as smooth as you can. So as you see, all right, we got that going. We focus on the side. So now, I am going to work with my, what I call my dry mixes. So this again is 1 cup of sugar, crystal white sugar. There's a half a teaspoon of cinnamon and a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. So we're just going to sprinkle that all up in here. And sometimes you'll have to do it by taste. Depending on your taste buds, you may have to add a little more sugar. I always say start with a tablespoon at a time so you never get it to be too much sugar. So a tablespoon a time until you get the taste. Because this is one of the recipes from my great-grandmother, may she rest in peace, Fannie Mae Cunningham. She was a diabetic, so she used less sugar. But as I learned with this recipe, because I like sugar, I added more. So I want you to kind of do your own. If you even want to start with just a half a cup of sugar and build from there, that's fine too. But I do believe that with the 1 cup of sugar, it is a really, really, really good blend. Okay? So now when you add the sugars, you see it kind of looks now a little runny. This is what you want it to look like. This is a really, 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 really great texture. All right. And so now you should also have this. And what this is a liquid mixture of everything, but it really is all 2 eggs, a cup, I think it's a cup of milk, and then it's a tablespoon of vanilla extract. That's it. But to make it easier for you all, put it together. What I always would suggest though, when you have them separately, I like to whisk my egg before I put it in there. I don't know, maybe it's a thing that I psychologically tell myself it tastes better. Because I've done it where I just put the whole egg in. I don't like it that way, so we're gonna move this up just a little bit.
Could they break it up with a fork before they put it in?
They can, but when you honestly do it separately, do them separately. But in this case, yes. Unless, you know what, let's actually do it.
There's a fork right there.
So there's a fork. We're just gonna whip this. It's almost like you kind of make it scrambled eggs a little bit, but you got a little.
That looks really good.
Yeah, it does. And it smells good too, I think, because of the vanilla. But no, don't try to eat it though.
Not yet.
Not yet. So now that we have this fully, give it a little bit, a couple more beats here. All right, and literally just pour it on in there. All right. So now we are about ready to put it in here and get it going. But let's just kind of tame it up a little bit here. And again, it's no such thing as over stirring. It's no such thing as over mixing, any of that. That is okay.
Now, is it okay to mix this mixture and get a good pie without a mixer or an electric whisk?
No. Well, let me rephrase that answer. You can use the whisk. I prefer to use a blender because it gives it a better blend. But let's just say you at home don't have a blender, okay? And I know some of you, all of you, should have gotten a whisk in there. So let's do the whisk. But this is beautiful. I do want to say this is really beautiful. But let's do this with the whisk. Now, when you're doing it with the whisk, just take your time because, you know, you'll make a big mess. Take your time. You can just stir and turn because it's going to blend. Now,
it just takes a little more elbow grease to do it with the whisk.
So for all you right-hand people, you should have some really good forearms. Well, let's try with the left. No, not lefty. Let's go back to this. But yeah, just take your time and stir, and you know, and turn the bowl. And as you can see, it is mixing very well. And you want to keep making sure you turn it and stir. Get that well blend.
You want to get it. You want to get it nice and smooth at this point, right?
Yes. And again, as you can see, you'll still see a few little lumps. Again, the lumps are okay. You will never get a sweet potato batter completely smooth. If you do, you're doing a lot of stirring. And I don't know if it's going to really come out as well, but you know, if you do try it like that, I would love to know that. But we're going to just continue mixing it here a bit. All right, so let's put this to the side. Oh, what I didn't mention, I'm sorry, in your bag, you should have one of these bags, and this bag should have your dry goods. So this should be your 1 cup of sugar, your teaspoon of nutmeg, and your teaspoon of cinnamon. So I should have pointed it out at first. Oops, sorry, but it should be in that bag here. Right. So now you should also have in your kit a pre-made tart. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get this opened up. Now, there's a few ways that I do my pie crust. A lot of times I will buy a frozen, unbaked pie crust, and I will make them. It depends on what the occasion is. It depends on my timing, because when you're doing making your own pastries from scratch, you know, it takes some time. And it has to be right. But really in a pastry, it really is just butter or shortening. I come from the era of lard. But shortening works very well, or you can use butter. And as you know, in baking, you use a lot of butter versus margarine. There's a huge difference. I use a lot of salted butter versus the unsalted, because a lot of the recipes is going to take a sprinkle of salt anyway to kind of blend recipes. So I strictly stick with salted butter. So, but with
And that's what they received, was
Yes.
salted butter.
good. Which is great. But of course, for a lot of you who, when you think of healthy, stay away from the salted butter. As a matter of fact, stay away from that type of butter. You can always get plant-based butter. The only difference between the plant-based butter and regular butter, of course, is healthy, but it cooks faster. So just always keep that in mind. Plant-based butter cooks a lot faster than regular butter. But going into the pastries, so the pastries here, they should be made with just flour, and you have to be careful with flours. There's 2 types of flour. You have regular all-purpose flour, and you have self-rising flour. You cannot use self-rising flour for a lot of baking things. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing anything cake-like, then yes, self-rising is perfect. But if you're doing cookies or something, strictly deal with the all-purpose. And I always refer to an all-purpose for something like this, not a self-rise. So this should just be maybe a little bit of sugar in here, and butter, and flour.
And your recipe for the pie crust that you like to use is included in the kit,
Yes, it's included. Thank you.
in your course pack.
Yes. All right. So here is our simple pie shell, and as you see, it's already brown. This is going to be a really simple thing, and I like to tell the new bakers this when we get the why I use the unbaked, the already made unbaked ones, because it just makes it a lot easier. You can, if you mess up the pastry of a pie, you messed up the entire pie. This is like the heart and soul of the pie. A lot of people think it's the filling. It really isn't. It really is the crust, because you can have some great filling and that crust is horrible. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to eat around that crust. So let's try to. So it's always easy to go ahead and get it unbaked if you're not that skilled. So this is a real simple. Just slide it in. You want to fit it in there as good as you do. Now, when you buy in the store-bought pie shells, the deep dish is always the better ones. I love, because it gives you a lot of room to kind of grow with your pie shell. So now, let me put it in there. And I always like to use, people think I'm crazy, I use these 2 fingers, and I don't like to put it out there, but I always use my middle finger, because that's the best way to be. And to each his own.
Yeah.
It's the easiest for me to get it in there. Maybe because that's the most longer finger that I have. I don't know.
And it's also very gentle to the pie
Yes.
crust, so you don't manhandle the crust too much.
Yes. Okay, and so once you get in there, and I'll use the fork versus the knife. Just chop off the essence. So simple. Just go all the way around. Now, what I also like to do too, I make little individual sweet potato pies. So when I have this little extra like that, I make those cute little ones. And that's just by way of playing around with things and not to waste some of the batter or the pastries that I will have. Because, you know, when you just making maybe one or two, something like that, you will waste sometimes some batter. Of course, if your measurements is not always properly there, but that's okay because that gives me room to kind of play with other things. So,
And that's a good way to use any extra pie crust you have. Yeah.
yes, yes. And also with a pie crust too, I'd like to let you know, and whether it's a store bought or if you're making your own, you know, you can always freeze them and use them for later also. So even if you have these little shreds, go ahead and put them into a ball. You can add them to other balls and re-roll it out when you want to make another pastry. And this is just for the people who like to really hold on to a lot of your stuff, because again, when you get into stuff like this, you will waste some items, but it's okay. It's okay. I like to play with those things that I waste. So, and that's how I learn. So now I'm just making sure that, you know, that it's properly, the tart is properly on our pan here. So now, this is where we can get a little bit creative with a few things that we do. I love to use forks, especially when I'm making my apple and peach pies. You just want to put a little design here. Just go all the way around with your fork. Now, you can also use your finger. But see, the fork, to me, gives you a better ridge. So as you see, I'm doing them both ways. You can either use your finger or you can use your fork. Which way would we like to go? Let's do the fork. And just go around. Now, some of the store-bought ones, okay, looks like your finger. But we want this to not only taste homemade, which it really is, we want it to look homemade because it is easy to go buy some. And bring it to the occasion like, hey, I made this. No, when you have someone like me, I'm going to say, oh, that was a patty pie you bought. All right. So now we have that. Okay. Here is our shape.
Beautiful.
Now, our mixture is really well. I always still will go around it again, but now we're ready to go. So now this is where we get to the point where you may have a little bit more batter. So because of this one is not a deep dish shell, we're going to have some left over. But with the deep dish, it should fully fill. Right, so now we just pour. And one thing I always like to do, I don't care how much you stir it, always take your spatula and dig to your bottom. You'd be surprised how much you will stir, and at the bottom you have a clump of something. So always use your spatula to stir that bottom. Scrape your sides. And now we pour. Yum, yum, and yum. Look at that.
Looks amazing.
Look at that. And again, with a deep dish, it'll be a little bit more, but we're going to make sure we put all of this in here. Ooh, look at that.
It's looking pretty full.
Yeah. And so don't be shy about making it go to the top. Now, as you can see, mine is completely at the top. When it bakes, it is going to rise a little bit. It's going to look similar to like a souffle a little bit. But if you know anything about souffles, it's also going to sink when it cools. So this is what we look like before we go in. Now, another tip that I didn't have on the recipe that I always like to do is that I use cinnamon sugar. So I'll let this bake for probably 30 minutes and then I'll take it out and sprinkle a little cinnamon sugar on it. You don't have to. I told you I'm a sugar head, but I do that and then just stick it back in the oven for another 30 to 45 minutes. Now, this is it. All right. So, welcome back. Look what I have here. I have a finished sweet potato pie. So, as you can see, the darkness on it, that's where I sprinkled the cinnamon sugar. I don't know, that's just me. I told you I'm a sugar head, so I love that. So that's what that those little dark spots are. So let's see what it looks like on the inside. Now, I'm very funny about cutting, so we're just gonna cut just a little slice here. I wish y'all could smell this.
The smell is
really
beautiful.
wish you could smell
Got a lot of
this.
cinnamon and just smells delicious.
Make sure I got it all the way in there. Voila. There we go. Where's the whipped cream? Now, a lot of people like whipped cream on theirs. I do. But I love mine with vanilla ice cream as well. So my family eats it a lot with vanilla ice cream. The kids, sometimes they will put some cool on it. But you eat it however you like. Maybe do both. Put a cherry on top of it. But here is a beautiful and delicious sweet potato pie.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This is adding so much to the Juneteenth celebrations, and I'm sure everyone's going to recognize this recipe and really enjoy learning this from you. And thank you so much for collaborating with us at Pasture and Plenty. And happy Juneteenth to everyone.
Juneteenth. And thanks for having me. Thank you.